So Pam's here. She's thrilled to be here, of course. Katie, we're so glad you're here with us too. And we're going to be talking tonight about caring for the military and their families. So I wanted to start by giving both Katie and Pam an opportunity, because you have two different perspectives on this, as a family member and as someone who is actively a part of a military family serving right now. So I wondered if you would just tell us about your own perspectives to start off. Who wants to go first?
Pam does.
I was like, Pam, you go.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure everyone here knows, but Lucas decided he wanted to join the Marines. I was glad that he was older. I would have been really frightened if he'd gone as an 18-year-old. We knew nothing about the military, so we were very worried and concerned. Because you control their lot. You hate to say it that way. You're the one they turn to, and that's fine. And then there comes a point where they need to be on their own, but he was going to be under the control of someone else for 4 years. And whether he liked it or not, he was there, he was stuck. So, that was a worry. And as a double thing for us, he had lived at home and gone to Indiana State, didn't want to stay over there, and drove back and forth. And I thought, how can you go be away for 4 years when you didn't want to go away to college, which was fine. So that I was just worried, that worried me. As a double whammy for us, about a month before he left, Audra left for college, our daughter. So we became empty nesters all of a sudden. So the hard part was, I don't know if anybody knows about basic. The hard part was during basic, you can't talk to them. So that, during the times of cell phones, instant talking to someone or texting, Mike said it was 13 weeks. It felt like a lot longer. For 13 weeks, it was letters only. So I faithfully wrote him letters every week, and I know he appreciated them. And I, of course, have kept my letters from him because he wrote me every week. So the rest of the time, because he is now out, he got out in September, the rest of the time wasn't near as difficult because you could talk. He called us every Sunday night the rest of the 4 years. And fortunately, he wasn't deployed anywhere that, would be very scary. He did training at Camp Lejeune in the Carolinas. And then everybody thinks this is awesome. He got sent to Hawaii, which he did not like, believe it or not. And he did a deployment to Okinawa and Australia, which he found very interesting. So I just put my trust in God, and the 4 years passed.
You did great, Pam.
Yes.
She loved public speaking.
She does.
See, I can't talk without crying.
We like that you're crying. So Katie, what about your perspective?
Well, I think it's a world of difference from Pam. So Carl, I know I'm trying to see who all is here. Can you just, Jay, who all is here tonight? That's one thing I wanted to know too. I didn't recognize. I see Pam. I heard Janelle. I think I saw Kay. I just wondered if everybody there knows me, like you know me. You've watched me grow up in the church. Is that correct?
Lois is probably the one who would know you the least. This is Angie, Pippin's daughter.
I assume.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So just a little bit of background, of course. Of course, I grew up in good old Robinson, Illinois, born and bred, lived there my whole life. And then after I graduated college, I didn't have any, or I guess I was in graduate school. I met my my future husband, Carl, through online dating. And that in and of itself, trying to meet for the first time presented some challenges. But I was finally able to go see him when he was stationed in Jacksonville. And we, through over the course of a couple of years, we developed it was not a couple of years. That I think that's the other thing about military relationships with military people in the military, is it feels like it kind of goes fast. So I would say we talked for about a year, and then we decided, okay, this is it. We're going to move to be together. And then we started talking in 2009, and by 2011 we were married. So it moves very fast. But what was I going to say? Okay, so you all know me, that I lived in Robinson my entire life. And whereas my husband, just some background about him, he is actually a quote unquote military brat himself. So he grew up, his dad is a retired Navy captain. And so he was very familiar with the moving every few years, because you move about every 3 years with the military. And that's with our experience as officers, or him as an officer. I'm not an officer, but with him as an officer, that's generally your time frame. You're going to get a new assignment every 3 years. He was used to that. And that was definitely something that I was not used to. But you know what? I rolled with it. And we've lived in Maryland. We've lived in Virginia Beach. I did spend some time back in Illinois while he was deployed for a period of time. We've also lived in Nevada together, and we now live near San Diego, California together. Well, of course, together. So we've lived in a number of places, and we've seen a lot of things. And also brought 2 beautiful babies into the world. But I think for him, if you ask him as far as challenges, it's just something that he's used to. I mean, he's used to seeing his dad go off to a deployment. He's used to the moving and coordinating the move every 3 years. For me, I've kind of gotten the hang of it now. But I will say that with each and every move, there are always challenges that are definitely presented. And I didn't know, is this the part where we go into the challenges, or are we just doing some general background information about ourselves?
You can just go ahead and transition right into that, Katie.
Right into challenges. Okay, I'm just hoping I'm not missing some things. But anyway, as I said, we were married in 2011 and experienced our first move when our oldest was a month old in 2013. That's the first time that we had moved together. And we were actually at that point moving right into a deployment. So I would say that was definitely one of the toughest things that we had to face. Was, here we had a newborn, and it was like, well, see you in 6 months, and so just some challenges. I would first and foremost say moving, and more moving, which every time you move, you're looking for a new church, you're looking for medical care, you're looking for housing, and is the housing in a good location for schools? The current school district that we are zoned for, we specifically chose where we were living because it was zoned for an excellent school within the district. Being able to find new jobs. So interviewing, when we moved to San Diego, I had been stay at home for not almost full time for about 5 years. So being able to, start that resume up again and put myself out there and be able to find that job. And which, by the way, I am for those that do not know me or not familiar, I am a speech pathologist. So, and I do work full time in the school district. I'm actually still in my office as we speak. So being able to jump back into that full force and, worrying about the kids, finding friends for the kids, finding new friends for ourselves. Those are definitely some of the main things that we continue to face every day. I will say that while my husband also was active duty for about 12 years, he did transition out to the reserves. He's now a reservist, but in a turning of events, he has now gone back active duty for a year, just to make things even more complicated. So while we thought for a long time that, deployment was not on the horizon for us again, we've done that, a couple of times, it is looking to be yet again another part of our life coming in March 2022. And this time it's going to look much different, because we have our children. And I think one of the biggest concerns for me is, how are they going to respond to that? Because I know that for me, I've done it twice. I did it once with him right after my sister passed away. And then I did it again, having a newborn. But now, again, we have children, and what are they going to say? So that's definitely something that is, see, Pam, you're not alone. I'll cry too. That's definitely something that I'm concerned will be the biggest challenge for us in this go round of 6 months, because as Pam mentioned, when they're gone, I mean, you can't just pick up the phone and say, oh, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? You have to wait for them to contact you a lot of the time. Even in this day and age of technology, you still have to wait for that FaceTime and for that phone call, and for, he didn't really send me packages, but I would send him packages. So it would just be waiting, I guess, for that communication to know that they're okay. So that's just some little bit of the challenges. If I think of more, I'll bring them up, but those are some basic things that we do face.
In each of those challenges, Katie, how do you think a Stephen minister might have helped you or helped Carl, or as you enter into this next challenge that's coming, would a Stephen minister be beneficial to you?
I think that a Stephen minister could help or be beneficial, because oftentimes when we're thrown into these situations, it's hard to think clearly all the time and to kind of develop a plan for, what's going to be good for you, what's going to be good for, in my case, for my children. And so I think a Stephen minister could help, not only by providing that listening ear for when, you are stressed out, things don't seem to be going right, you haven't been able to communicate with your spouse, but also providing that support and saying, hey, have you thought about doing X, Y, and Z? Or, could they, what kind of, that would be what I would be looking for, is just kind of an extra brain, I guess, to help kind of plan and to organize and brainstorm and problem solve some things for me.
Excellent. We'll let you catch your breath. We'll go back to Pam. She's ready to cry more.
Oh, no.
No, you're fine. So Pam, as a parent in this experience, what concerns did you have about Lucas's enlistment and about his deployment? And how do you think a Stephen minister could have helped you?
Well, basically, as I said before, the fear of where was he going, that you had no way to contact him, no control in any way, no way to talk to him. So, that was all very scary. he lived at home. We were used to having him, around us all the time. I think a Stephen minister would have been helpful. Just somebody to, listen, to know that, I was going to talk to him every week. I think it would have been very helpful. But before there were Stephen ministers, I'll cry again. I had a group of friends that were my beneficial Stephen ministers. Especially with both kids gone, they made it their mission to keep us busy and occupied basically every day. And that's what got us through. But yes, I think anybody in the military, Stephen minister would be helpful.
This is a question that I'm curious about, so either one of you can answer this. But we know that there's sometimes some confidentiality about military operations. So if you were to have a Stephen minister, are there things that would be off limits in terms of what you could talk about with a Stephen minister, or knowing that we're supposed to be engaged in a confidential relationship as Stephen ministers with our care receivers?
Yeah.
Would you feel comfortable sharing anything with them?
Katie, that's you, because I asked Lucas if he ever did anything in the 4 years that would be considered confidential, and where he was, he said no. So I'm sure your husband probably did confidential things.
Yes, definitely. The term loose lips sink ships. You can't, they really drill it into your brain, the importance of what they call OPSEC and PERSEC. So operational security and personal security as well. I'm thinking I believe that's what PERSEC means. I know OPSEC is operational security, but they really, you can't post a lot of things on social media. And when they're talking to you, they can only, he would say to me, well, I'm getting ready to come into port, but I can't tell you until I get there. And then next thing I know, I get a phone call that says, hey, I'm in Italy or whatever, enjoying the food here. And Carl, I will say right now, he is part of a SEAL team. And, if anybody knows anything about SEAL teams, everything that they're doing is, I would say the majority of what they're doing is highly confidential. And while he is not, he's not the guy that's at the front of the line in, the number one guy in the SEAL team, he is helping to, I should back up and say that he's a supply officer. So he is helping support their mission through making sure that they do have their supplies and things like that for the mission. So that's what he does. But at the same time, even just recently, some of his training, he said, this was some really cool, and I'll let you fill in, what you think he said, but I can't tell you anything about it. And it was some training that he was out, until midnight doing one night. So for me, there's not a lot. I can say he's in the Mediterranean, or he's maybe kind of give a country, but I really can't give a lot of information. And he's definitely very tight-lipped, which he should be with regard to information. And then on social media, I don't tend to post anything. I don't post timelines or dates for anything of return, because it's all a risk for his security and for our security too.
So are you able to share things with him, like pictures of the boys, and like that you would share on social media and see? Are you able to share them across the waves, or you just have to wait till he gets home?
Janice, is that you asking?
Yes.
Hello. Yes, I can. We do. Yeah, we share. In fact, that's one of the things that he'll ask for the most. He'll say, I love your emails, but if If you could just send me a couple of photos a day of the boys or of, or back then it was of baby Walker. When now he's 8. But if you could just send some photos, you can. And occasionally he would send photos if he had access to it. And again, if it was like he was promoted during his first deployment. So he sent me a picture of his promotion. But as far as other things, he didn't share because so many of those spaces within ships and different the facilities, you can't send that. So yeah, but I can send him stuff. That's a good question.
So would it be a good rule of thumb, perhaps, to say that you as the military family person should take the lead on sharing, and that a Stephen minister should just not ask questions?
Yes, absolutely. Mhm.
Okay. So my next question, which you've kind of started to touch on, Katie, is talking about children and the support that children in a military family need. So Stephen ministers, we don't provide care to people under the age of 18. But what do you think a church could do for children in a military family to support them?
I think that how the church could support it, if it's possible, just making sure that the kiddos are included and have an opportunity to make it to various church functions. I know that me as a full-time working mom, I rely on my husband a lot to help me with transportation and pickup. So if there are activities and things that are going on where transportation can be provided, that would be phenomenal, if that's possible. Childcare, being able to offer that to the parent that's at home, trying to support the kiddos while the spouse is away. And I don't just making sure, I know you guys don't do counseling, and I don't know if there's a way, I know with schools being confidential and all that, but just making sure that if the child appears to need the counseling, that they can go talk to the school counselor about it, or just something of that nature. Because I know for one of my sons, my 8-year-old, it definitely helps for him to talk through his feelings after he's done something wrong or something's bothered him at school. And my 5-year-old is just not, he's a little more closed in that respect, where he doesn't want to talk as much. But I think it would be important for me, especially for Walker, to know that someone was checking in with him, and being able to support him in that way, making sure that he's doing okay.
I also thought that the church could make a ministry of sending cards or maybe even occasional small gifts to the kids.
I like that idea, Pam. That's really, because they love any kind of mail. Oh, kids love mail. In fact, my kids today were like, Mom, you're getting all these Amazon packages. It's not fair. So anything, even a card or a small item would be great.
So I kind of ask this question every time we do a panel, but I'm going to ask it because I want to be consistent. So I'm going to ask it of both of you. What are things that have been helpful that people have said to you as a military family, and what are things that people should avoid saying or asking?
Pam, did you want to go ahead?
Fine. What we found really helpful was people said they were proud of him and that they were praying for his safety and for our peace. And it was people, all the church people and friends reaching out and asking, letting us know that they were thinking about us. Do you want to know the other side too, or did you just ask the one? Okay. I try to think of something that had been said to me during the 4 years. And at first I couldn't really think of anything. Mike immediately, when I asked him, he immediately said, a friend who was being well-minded, but said, oh, he's strong, he'll be okay. And he said that bothered him, and that it still bothers him to this day. I had a friend who said, she didn't mean it bad, but I just felt it was rather callous at the time. It hit me today as I was kind of going back through things. She said, oh, well, at least you're empty nesters now. And I thought, you don't get it, you don't get it at all. And she also was someone that never ever did ask, hey, how's he doing during the 4 years? So that's really all I can add to that side of it. But, like I said, helpful was everybody telling us that they were praying. That was very important, and their concern, and sending him cards. We really appreciated that too. Katie?
Yeah, I will just to piggyback off of what Pam's saying. I will definitely say that when people have offered to pray, when they've offered even, not, I would say, some opportunities to grow in faith for me, like when they've had suggestions for, there's no pressure, when there's no pressure, but you may find this helpful when they have, a book or something that they found to be resourceful. I always appreciate that. As far as avoiding, I'm trying to think of things that people should avoid saying. I will say one thing that did, I think I had to stay away from social media sometimes, because when people would say, oh, my husband's gone on a work trip for 2 weeks. That was always hard. And then one day I literally did reply to a friend, 2 weeks, question mark, try 6 months, and I felt bad. And I saw that some other military spouses actually liked my post when I said that. And I'm like, well, people don't know when they're not in your shoes. It's hard sometimes for people to know what you are going through. But I think that was really the only thing that I remember people just mentioning something of that nature, and it really just kind of bothering me in that respect.
I want to open it up for questions.
Well, could there be a chance that he would be gone more than 6 months?
Becky, is that you? Becky Mainstream. I'm just like, I hear a voice and I'm like, that's gotta be, sorry. There right now, no, because he has a year of active duty. So it's, they said 6 months of training, 6 months of deployment. Now I say no, but I laugh, because it's the Navy, and the Navy, I mean, you can't always plan for what they're going to throw at you. I had friends that, especially after the beginning of COVID, their husbands were supposed to be home from a deployment on a ship after, I think it was only supposed to be, I think theirs was supposed to be 9 months, because they were on a bigger ship. So the bigger ships are out longer. They came home after a year because they were all healthy, because they were healthy and their ship was going and they hadn't been exposed to COVID, the government kept them out there. So there is always that possibility. But right now, 6 months.
Katie, is there a possibility that you'll be sent overseas?
Yes, Marcia, yes, he will be absolutely sent overseas. It will be, the location has changed. It's been Guam. Right now it's Bahrain. I know there was some potential for it possibly being Israel, but right now it is Bahrain is where it's looking to be.
I
Mhm.
just texted my nephew. I have nephews in it. I have two nephews in the Navy. And one spent 2 years in Sicily, deployed there with NATO. But Joe spent 9 months on land at a new different employment, but he was 8 months on an aircraft carrier, gone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right?
That sounds right. That sounds right. Long deployments there.
I was going to say too, we're talking about care receivers as far as the family, but it's also very important for churches and friends to do as much as they can for those who are deployed, because it's an outreach that also the family feels as well. So with Joe, my nephew's been in almost 20 years and been on many aircraft carriers out of San Diego, now out of Norfolk. He said, 3 years ago, I said, what do you need? Because they were deployed at Christmas. And I said, what do you need? And he said, what my men and women need is really kind of silly. He goes, but we have a Keurig in our department, and there are 110 people I oversee. And you would be surprised what one K-cup does after a night of being out on the flight deck. A K-cup of, and so Stephanie and I went to Evansville with Stephanie, and we hit every store we could with every variety of K-cup I could possibly buy. And we shipped them, at $50, huge box. And they got hundreds and hundreds of K-cups. And later, he took a picture of all of his people on the flight deck, thanking us, a picture for just the K-cups. You know what I mean? Now, we sent cards as well. But you think about that. If you want a little taste of something different, a chai tea or a hot chocolate made a difference. So those are the sort of things that you have to be very creative in this kind of a ministry, Yeah. So Katie, will you be sent with him to live there, or will you stay here if that happens with him?
We will remain local. This is not something that would be accompanied, and I don't have at the moment, I don't have passports for my boys to be able to even go and visit. And I'm not even sure I would want to visit over there. I think that is one of the, dare I say, safer areas, Bahrain, for the military to be over for a certain period of time. But I think we will stay. We will stay where we're at, because both of them. That's the other thing. Both of them are in school right now. One of them, Walker's in 3rd grade, and Carson is in. We have what we call transitional kindergarten in the state of California. So he's actually in like a pre-kindergarten, and they both go every day. So I feel like it's important for them to remain consistent for them, so that they're there. But what we will try to do is we're going to try to visit my mom and dad as much as we can, and plan a nice lengthy visit to Robinson, and also visit Carl's parents. They live in Georgia. So.
Janice, were you going to ask something?
I was just gonna ask how a church could connect. I don't know if either of you know this, but are there churches on base, or are there church ways that you could connect with like a group, like Mark's nephew's group or Carl's group, or and know what to send them? Because I know when during the last conflict, like Marcia Peters and a lot of those mothers that had kids in Afghanistan, they organized things, and then we could take part in that, our Sunday school class or whatever. But I just don't know how to. I don't know how to go about contacting, like Pam, you said, a good ministry would be to help military people, but I don't know I
Like,
mean,
how do you, are you talking about like, where would you send them to, or?
yeah,
what
how do
group?
you get
Yeah.
that connection? Do you just call a base, or do you, anybody know? No?
That would be, I was gonna say, that's a good question, Janice. I know that for the ships, when they go out to deploy, which very different, Carl's not on a ship this time. But when they do go out, they have a chaps or a chaplain who is, it's, I don't want to say is of a specific denomination, I guess non-denominational, who does deliver services and delivers counseling and things like that to service members on the ship. With the on land, that's a great question. That's something I could definitely look into and ask my husband about to see what the possibilities are. But he hasn't said. He'll usually say who's traveling with them, and he hasn't said, oh yeah, by the way, there's a chaplain traveling with us. So I don't know that yet.
The aircraft carriers, there are like a head chaplain, but it's not necessarily always, I mean, they try to make it very all denominational, but there's a
Mhm.
team also of sailors who have been trained to assist the chaplain in different areas. So like my nephew is filled in that area because he's Catholic in that area. So because there's over 5,000 people on an aircraft carrier, there's
Mhm.
got to be a team to do that sort of thing and have church services at different times, different areas, that sort of thing.
Katie, I'd like to talk about your children now. My brother was a Navy man for many, many, many years and was deployed many, many times. And while he was gone, the wife, my sister-in-law, had to be the disciplinarian. And when he would return, then they looked to mom, not dad. And that was a hurtful thing for him to have to endure. So
Mhm.
your children are still small, but this is something very real within the military family.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm sorry, did you have a specific question about that, or like, is that a concern for us, or how are we going to navigate that, or?
How those are things you have to handle when you're on your own and by yourself while he's gone.
Mhm. And that, you know what, that's something else. I struggle every day with disciplining anyway, because I just feel like kids are, I tell my boys even now, I go, if I had said that to your Grammy, my mom, you guys know her, if I had said that to her, oh, like, yikes, my mom meant business. She would give me a look and I would just stop. But my kids just, no, kids nowadays, and even kids that I work with, I work in a TK through 5 building. Even nowadays, the kids, the stuff that they say to you is just, so yeah, I think that's definitely something that, again, too, if there's some support there with disciplining, that, that could be helpful too, as well. And then with the part about coming back and reintegrating, I know that the sailors do some reintegration seminars and things like that on board the ship before they come back. But again, I'm just not sure with his, how that's going to look different from what he's previously done. But I know that they do some counseling, and they talk to them about how, hey, you've been gone. Don't be, and everybody else, you've been gone, and while your life has remained static for the last 6, 9, however many months, everybody else's life continues to move. And so there's definitely going to be a period of adjustment for you. And I will say, thankfully, that the last 2 deployments that we've been through, that the period of adjustment has been relatively short. But again, this time, different circumstances.
Well, we're grateful to both of you, and especially because this is the end of the workday for you, Katie. And I'm sure you're ready to get home. But thank you for taking the time to talk with us about this. I think this has been very good and helpful for all of us. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Katie.
Bye, Pam. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. And I love this church. I'm so happy that I could be a part of it. And please feel free, if you have questions for me, to shoot me an email. My mom obviously has my contact, and you can get a hold of me. But I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and I don't know, I may be looking in the spring for some additional support, because I just, like I said, I'm not sure how it's all going to play out.